This video will go over the CMOPE-E, also known as the Canadian Model of Occupational Therapy Performance. Why is there an E at the end? After an update in 2007, the E was added and stands for engagement, so it is now known as the Canadian Model of Occupational Therapy Performance and Engagement. This model is actually related to the COPM, or Canadian Occupational Performance Measure, and it's what is used widely in occupational therapy practice and research. Hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm an occupational therapist. I make occupational therapy content on my blog, OTDUDE.com, social media, podcasts, and regularly here on YouTube. If you're interested in learning more about occupational therapy, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss a single video. Also, check out my free resources in the description below. Let's get functional. The original CMOP was commissioned in Canada to create a model to define the domain of occupational therapy. It is actually based on Maslow's hierarchy and the component of self-actualization for motivation, as well as Carl Rogers' work on client-centered care. Therefore, the CMOPE-E is a holistic model in which the client is autonomous and empowered to collaborate with the therapist instead of the therapist leading or guiding the intervention. The current CMOPE-E model can be drawn as a 3D diagram to what looks to me like a tree ring in circles. It is often drawn with the triangle, which represents the person or individual. Starting from the very center of the core, you have spirituality. While this may be related to religion, it does not necessarily have to be. I think of it more as the human spirit or motivation for occupations. Human spirit is defined as the pervasive life force, manifestation of a higher self, source of will, and this self-determination, sense of meaning, purpose, and connectedness. You may be familiar with the person, environment, occupation, or PEO model. The CMOPE also has these major components with the person at the center, but instead of the environment being next in the layer, it's instead occupation and environment being the furthest from the center. One trick to remember this for the CMOPE is that the person is at the center, but because the PEO model is the PEO model, the CMOP model is therefore flipped, so it is POE. P for person, O for occupation, and E for environment instead of PEO. Hope that helps. The CMOPE identifies itself with occupational science and considers the client's mind, body, and spirit. CMOP is derived from other disciplines including education, economics, anthropology, medicine, and sociology in the understanding of the client's occupations. CMOPE has three major assumptions: person, occupation, and environment. Before we go into each component, what is nice about CMOPE is that it is loosely defined and can be interpreted differently based on the client. There are no strict definitions. Starting with the very first assumption, people have an innate need to engage in occupations. When we think of the individual, the model addresses their affective, physical, and cognitive abilities. Affective, like flat affect, is their psychosocial and emotional skills, including the intra and interpersonal abilities. Physical includes their sensory and motor functions. Examples of cognitive ability, for example, are memory, comprehension, and intellectual ability. 2. There is a relationship between the client and their environment. The environment includes the physical, social, cultural, and institutional environment. Notice that CMOPE specifically mentions the institutional environment. Examples include organizational, policy, governmental policies, environmental issues, that kind of thing. Basically on a larger scale instead of the immediate physical environment for the client. COVID-19 and its related policies, rules, and laws would probably be a factor of the institutional environment as an example. 3. Occupation is interconnected with the person and their environment. The three categories of occupation are self-care, productivity, and leisure. Does this sound familiar? Notice that these same categories are used in the COPM interview and assessment form. Also, as there are only three categories for this, there is no strict definition based on the occupation in question. What one considers productivity, such as gardening, may be considered leisure for someone else, or even self-care for yet another individual. It's really up to the client themselves. So how do we tie all these components together? Remember that occupation is between the person and environment, kind of like cheese inside a grilled cheese sandwich. Therefore, occupation is how the person interfaces with their environment, whether it be physical, social, cultural, or institutional. When there is a balance between these elements, the client is able to engage in occupations despite having a disability. In other words, the interaction between the person, environment, and occupation results in occupational performance, which is the ability for a person to perform occupations and daily engagements. What about the E in CMOPE? The expansion of the occupational engagement from the CMOP considers how the client chooses and performs their meaningful occupation in their environment. Last, the COPM, not to be confused with the CMOPE, is the assessment based on this model to put into practice with clients where they rank the prior performance, how satisfied they are with these performances in the occupations of self-care, leisure, and productivity. This interview and ranking allows the client and therapist to gain insight into how to focus on the goals of therapy. Many people ask what the difference is between PEO model and the CMOPE is. They share some similarities and differences. As mentioned earlier, they both have the person, occupation, and environment. They are both top-down instead of bottom-up. And remember how the individual person in CMOPE is at the center of the tree ring? In the PEO-P model, it is depicted as more like Venn diagrams, so there is an equal importance for a person, environment, occupation in PEO-P instead of a greater importance on the person, which is at the center in CMOPE. Because again, it is the center with spirituality for the client. Both the CMOPE and PEO focus on intervention for occupational performance. However, the intervention and how you reach occupational performance for each model differs though. With CMOPE, the focus of intervention is on person, occupation, and environmental fit between these factors. With PEO-P, the focus of intervention is instead on addressing enablers and barriers to each component of the person, environment, and occupation. With regards to the environment and how OT is moving from the individual to larger population and groups, both CMOPE and PEO-P address the institutional environment as well. Another difference is the end goal. The desired outcome of CMOPE is occupational engagement, like the E in CMOPE, whereas the desired outcome in PEO-P is occupational participation. Hence, the abbreviation for P in PEO-P. Easy to remember, right? I hope this helps. Give this video a thumbs up if you like this kind of content. Be sure to subscribe for more OT content. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.